I'll introduce you and we can take it from there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for joining today.
Good to be here. Looks like we've got a good group already. People are filing in, and we're going to have a great session today.
Yep. Yeah. Looking forward. So, yes. So this is Finance Meets Real Estate, as I mentioned already. So we have a great guest here today, Yakov Smart. So he's the author of Disrupting LinkedIn. So, and he's considered the leading expert when it comes to attracting high net worth investors and raising capital using LinkedIn. He has shared the stage at Bravo's hit TV show, $1 Million Listing, and being a guest on numerous media outlets. And yeah, I'm going to give him more opportunity to present himself. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to you, Yakov.
Awesome. All right. Hi, everyone. We're going to keep today's session really interactive because we've got a pretty full house today. I know people are still filing in. Thank you, Stephen, for having me. So I want to know, first and foremost, let us know in the chat box where you're coming from today. I'm sure we have people from all over the country. So let us know where you're zooming in from. I want to be able to say hi to you. Looks like we've got Tulu from California, right next door to me. I'm here in Arizona. We've got Judy from Oregon. Steven's coming from New York City. Great place. Got Chris from Jersey. Alberto is coming from Houston. Nice. We've got Aram from Los Gatos, California. I'm not sure where that is, but sounds like a cool place. We've got East Africa, Phoenix. Hey, Christopher, shout out to you. Next door, I'm here in Scottsdale. Got Brian from San Carlos Bay Area. Nate coming in from Brooklyn. Okay, way to represent Brooklyn, Nate. Brooklyn in the house. Awesome. All right, keep them coming, guys. Where's everyone coming in from? We've got Brian. We've got Nank Win. I know how to say that because I've met people with that last name. It's pronounced Win. From Denver, Colorado. And Jude is coming from sunny St. Petersburg. All right. Packed house today. So let's kick things off. And then we got Tapan coming from Sacramento. So I want to know, and let me know in the chat box, because today's topic, it's a very important topic. It's also an interesting topic because we're going to talk about how you can fund your deals. We're going to talk about how you can raise private capital and connect with high net worth investors using LinkedIn. So I want to know in the chat box, right? Because I know there's people who are in different stages of their capital raising and their real estate investing journey. So I want to know what kind of deals you're wanting to fund right now, right? Let me know in the chat box. I'm sure we have people doing multifamily, mobile homes. Let me know what kind of deals you're looking to fund. So let's see, we've got fix and flip and multifamily. We've got Chris, 2 to 4 unit multifamily. Awesome. Okay, let's see what else. We've got Nank, who's a lender. We've got development, SFR, and multifamily commercial. Very cool. Any other types of asset class? Blockchain from Jude. Okay, that's cool. That's different. I like it. That sounds next level. I dig it. Definitely applies to this. We got Tapan, who's multifamily and MHPs. Aram is multifamily and build to rent communities. Very cool. Anna is multifamily. Yeah, and I would imagine we've got a lot of multifamily folks here, a lot of the people that work with us and want to raise private capital or doing it for multifamily. They want to go big with their deal. So I like that. So the first thing I'll tell you today, and this is really, really important, that what we're going to talk about, we've got Scott 1031 exchange. Awesome. What we're going to talk about applies to funding almost any type of deal imaginable, right? So if you want to raise private capital, whether it's blockchain, multifamily, you want to use it to buy businesses, you want to do a mobile home syndication, 1031 exchange, across the board, this process that we're talking about is an investor lead generation process, okay? And it's having the ability to take someone from LinkedIn who's a high net worth individual, build enough trust and build enough value to where that person is going to want to find out more about investing with you. So I'm curious, as we get started, how many of you have actually gone out and raised private capital? If you have, let us know in the chat box and let us know, ballpark how much you've raised so far. And if you haven't, let us know that too, because I want to meet you where you're at with what we talk about today. All right, so Judy's raised about $300,000. Congratulations, Judy. Awesome start. Good for you. Let's see who else we've got. So, and if you haven't raised private capital yet, let me know too. Newbie, Alberto's just getting started. Tula's, starting at 100K. Yeah, you do have to start somewhere. Aram's a pro at this, man. He raised 6.5 mil for his last deal. So way to go on that. Chris hasn't done it yet. Let's see what else we've got. So we've got a wide range of experiences. Tapan 1 million, Christopher 2 million plus, Anna's getting started. Right. So I want to dispel as we get started. Christopher has done friends and family for 100K. Way to go, right? Because there's something about raising capital. Jude's done 141,000. Way to get started. There's something about raising private capital that once you get the process started, something shifts and you start to see it differently, right? If you haven't done this yet, I want you to follow along the investor lead generation process, but understand one of the best ways to really get things in motion is through action, right? Especially when we talk about a place like LinkedIn, okay? So when it comes to raising private capital, and I want to address something really important as we get into it as well, is regardless of where you are in your capital raising journey, okay, even if you haven't raised any money yet, even if you don't have a deal coming up in the next 30 to 60 days, the time to start implementing this type of system is now. It's today, it's this week, okay? Because you want that list, write this down. You want to have this list of deal-ready investors ready when you have a deal to fund, okay? The last thing you want to do is have a great deal that you need to close and then not be able to close it and lose out on a massive opportunity, okay? So even if you're a complete newbie at raising capital, or if you're just starting your fund, let's say, or you don't have a deal coming up in the next quarter, you want to start building that list of deal-ready investors now, okay? That's what all the big players you hear who raise billions in private capital, the reason they do it is they have a list of deal-ready investors, okay? So you want to give yourself that same advantage. So today we're going to be talking about specifically LinkedIn as a platform for finding potential investors, okay? So before we talk about why LinkedIn, share a bit about myself, and Stephen did a great job introducing me. The people we work with are entrepreneurs, most of them real estate entrepreneurs, but we have a few different asset classes and investment opportunities as well. Are entrepreneurs who, here's what usually happens, okay? They have big aspirations. They want to grow and scale a large portfolio, and they know they're going to need a lot of capital to make their goals come true, okay? And most people are told from a mentor, or they do research online, or they read a book, to start with friends and family when it comes to raising money. And it's great advice, okay? Because most people know a couple of people who have the financial means to potentially invest, okay? And for some of you like me, maybe you didn't start out with a silver spoon in your mouth. Like I came from an immigrant family to the US, and I didn't know a lot of quote unquote rich people growing up who could write a check for 500K or for $1 million, right? And some of you are probably in that same boat. And so what happens is, people very quickly exhaust their warm network. Okay, very quickly they start to realize like, oh shoot, I want to raise $5 million. Maybe in my warm network I can raise 150K, but there's a big gap. Okay. And so where LinkedIn comes in, where it's going to play in for you, regardless of how much capital you've already raised, there's another level of access to funds that you can get, right? And that's where we start to look at how do you go about building key relationships with people who don't know you from Tom, and get them to want to learn more about investing with you, okay? And that's my focal point. That's my area of expertise here. I've developed this skill set of online lead generation and marketing for a number of years. And, more recently, it's been working exclusively with people who want to find investors and raise private capital. Because when COVID hit last year, a lot of people from the real estate community would come to me and they would say, well, I used to go to these big conferences and networking events to meet investors. Well, guess what? That went away, right? So what we're talking about is something that's going to put the ball back in your court, where you take control of being intentional and meeting those potential investors. So why LinkedIn? Okay, and let me know in the chat box how many of you already have a LinkedIn profile. If you do, just say yes. So let me know in the chat box. I want to make sure everyone at least has a LinkedIn profile. If you haven't logged in a while, that's okay too. Cool. So yeah, just about all of you probably have LinkedIn profiles. Okay, yeah, Alberto, exactly. So not REI related. And I'm sure some of you have LinkedIn profiles and you're still working a day job and you've got a profile that you've used for that. And you may have heard of LinkedIn. Okay, great. You're going to have your resume on LinkedIn. Great place to showcase yourself. So what we're talking about today is using LinkedIn as a platform, as a tool, and as a vehicle for attracting the investors you're looking for. Okay, so why LinkedIn as opposed to Facebook, as opposed to TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all these other options, right? Because you're like a lot of entrepreneurs, you've probably heard a lot of things you could or should be doing when it comes to marketing. And you probably like real estate or blockchain or whatever you're raising capital for a lot more than you like marketing. Okay. If you agree with that, let me know in the chat box, right? I'm sure a lot of you don't necessarily love marketing, right? But what we're talking about is different. What we're talking about is relationship building. Okay. So why LinkedIn? Well, you have to understand that the average household income of a LinkedIn user is $115,000. So right out of the gate, average person on LinkedIn, six-figure earner already, six-figure household income, okay? First thing. Second thing, more than 700 million users around the world and about 130 million accounts here in the US, and about 25%, not 25%, but about 1 in 4 LinkedIn users are decision makers in their own businesses. Okay, they're decision makers in their organizations or direct decision makers in their own businesses, right? So it is the platform to connect with high net worth individuals. So when you think about high net worth investors, and I'm going to ask you something here in a second, but usually people are looking for doctors, lawyers, highly successful CEOs, venture capitalists, angel investors, ultra affluent corporate executives, right? Family offices, institutional investors. Guess what? All those people are on LinkedIn, and you can reach all those people directly on their mobile device. Okay, you can build that relationship with those people directly because LinkedIn gives you the capability to hyper target the specific individuals you're looking for who can invest in your deals and to build that key relationship. Okay, so when we think about that, when we think about ideal investors, okay, and this is the starting point. We want to ask ourselves, who is a potential ideal investor? So in the chat box, and actually do this right now, okay, pick one, follow along, because you'll get a lot more out of this from interacting and engaging. Who's an example of an ideal investor for you? So let me know, one potential occupation they might have, and what the minimum amount you want that individual to be able to invest with you would be, right? So for example, you could say, a doctor might be a good fit and they need to be able to invest at least 250,000, right? So let me know in the chat box who an example of a potential investor for you would be. And if you haven't raised any capital yet, just guesstimate, right? Just give me an example of, an occupation they might have and the minimum investment requirement. Okay, so give you a second to do that, and then we'll go through some of these answers. We've got doctor, $50,000. We've got software engineer, 100 grand at least. Successful businessman, I like it, 125K. Dentist can definitely be a good group, $100,000. Tapin is saying high income professional, doctor, engineer, chiropractor, minimum 100K investment. And absolutely, I know a lot of self-directed IRAs can be invested in real estate. Okay, investment bankers, $50,000. Investment bankers, $100,000, right? So all these people, guess what? They're on LinkedIn. You can target those people directly. There's 5 ways, and it starts with a who, right? So there's 5 ways to build potential investor list on LinkedIn. Okay, I'm gonna give you what those 5 ways are. Now, here's what's important about this. Okay, this is kind of the pool. When we talk about building these lists, this is the pool to pull from, right? Because on LinkedIn, like I said, there's hundreds of millions of people. So you want to really narrow it and segment it down, okay? And as opposed to going somewhere, and let's say, there's companies out there, some of you may have bought lists from, who are list brokers, and they'll sell a list from anywhere between usually $2,000 to $10,000 for a list. Now, the problem is, right, if you're looking for accredited investors, which I know most of you are, the problem is if you go and you buy that list of accredited investors, by the time you get that list, that data is going to be at least a little outdated. You've still got to sift through, and it's an ice cold list. Okay. Here's the difference on LinkedIn. You can build this list, hyper-targeted list, literally within a matter of minutes using LinkedIn's filters, and the data is up to date in real time. Okay. So I'll give you an example here. Right. So first way you can build lists is using the free LinkedIn search, right? So everyone's who's got a LinkedIn account. If you go on the free account, you can search, pick a criteria. You want a dentist, search for the word dentist. You're going to see a ton of people come up, right? That's not as narrow as we want to get, but it'll give you a kind of, you'll start getting excited at the possibilities from that free search, right? So that's one way. Second way is you can search by LinkedIn groups. So check this out. There's groups on LinkedIn by interest, right? So what if you could find people who were interested in alternative investment opportunities or in real estate investing or in multifamily or in mobile home, right? All these different asset classes. What if you could find groups of entrepreneurs or people who are involved in high ticket masterminds, right? That option is available on LinkedIn and you can reach those people and target those people as well, okay? Third way is, let's say you already have a database. Let's say you already have an email list, or maybe you bought a list from somewhere of accredited investors. You can actually import that list directly into LinkedIn and start connecting with those people as well, okay? Fourth way is LinkedIn advertising, okay? Now I wanna be really, really clear. For everyone on this call, you don't need to advertise on LinkedIn to get results. You don't need to run ads to generate investor leads, okay? It's more expensive than a lot of places right now, and it's not nearly as effective, but it gives you some different criteria that you can play with. I don't recommend for students and private clients to advertise on LinkedIn, but it's an option for you. Fifth way is to use LinkedIn Premium, okay? And particularly the premium that I recommend is called Sales Navigator. Okay. Now what this does, there's about 15 to 20 different filters that you can mix in there, and you can get hyper targeted based on 3 things. Okay. And this is really important because your ideal investor is going to hit this sweet spot. And I'll actually draw this. Let's see if we can pull up the whiteboard. Yep. And Stephen, if I start drawing here and you can't, I'll actually write it. But if I start writing here and you can't see stuff, like interrupt me and let me know, because sometimes, Zoom is weird, right? So the first one there, and this is a mix of 3 criteria, right? So I'll draw, I won't put it in the circles, but criteria number 1 is net worth, right? So on LinkedIn, is there a filter where you can say, okay, I want people who are, net worth of 10 million and up? Not exactly that specifically, but you can be assumptive about it, right? So if someone's the CEO of a company, for example, that has 5,000 employees and that person lives in the Bay Area, do you think they're a high net worth individual? Of course, right? So net worth is one. And I call it net worth range, right? So we want to think of ranges, right? Most of you are looking for someone who's got a net worth with a range of, let's say, $1 million to $10 million. Some of you a little higher, but let's call it that range. And everyone's net worth range might be a little bit different. So we want to target by net worth range using the filters, okay? Second thing is we want income longevity. Right. So this is where if someone's a CEO at a company, or if, in the Bay Area and they've been doing it for 23 years, for example, that person's probably been earning a mid 6-figure or higher salary for 23 years. So that income longevity adds this net worth range. Okay. And third thing is the mindset. Right. So based on their interests, right? Are they already open to the idea of alternative investing? I believe that right now we live in a golden era of alternative investing opportunities, right? Yield Street, huge company, they raised almost $2 billion in Q4 of 2020 alone in private capital, right? So a lot of these folks, before they used to need to shake your hand and have an in-person meeting to pull the trigger and invest with you. Now people have become very comfortable. I mean, look at you being here, to investing online and to, getting educated online, right? So you have an opportunity to do that on this platform specifically. And the bonus here, and really the beauty, the magic lies in the overlap. The bonus is that we call it streams of commonality. Okay, and I'll explain what that means. So let's say someone says, okay, a dentist is an ideal investor for me. Okay, great. What do you have in common with dentists? They're like, huh? Okay, well, you have teeth, yes. They have teeth too. Dentists can live in a wide range of places. They can have, different types of practices, but you want to start with asking yourself the question, who's a group that you have something in common with, right? So if you come from a software engineering background, software engineers can be a great group, right? But a big mistake is to go after a group just because you think they have money, right? Like, for example, doctors. A lot of people think that just because someone's a doctor, they have money and they're going to be open. Usually doctors are terrible business people, and you're better off going for someone who, for example, who's like a VP of sales at a company and does very, very well and is open to exploring new opportunities, right? So the very first thing that we have to do, and I call it magnetizing your list, right? That's the term we're going to use. So think about building lists on LinkedIn. We talked about 5 ways to do it. And I'm going to share with you a little later a webinar that has a little bit more of this where we go in further detail that you can check out as well. But we're going to talk about magnetizing your lists. Okay. So, you know, it's thinking about a list of the types of investors that you want to attract, right? And being hyper targeted, hyper specific. LinkedIn right now, compared to any other platform out there, even Facebook, you can get hyper-targeted data at your fingertips, and it's a more effective, more detailed search than anything out there, hands down, period. Okay, so now let's talk about this next piece right here. And Stephen, I'm going to pause and grab a sip of water. Can you let me know how we're doing on time, how long we want to go for today? Because I want to make sure we have some time for questions at the end too.
No, we're pretty good. We're good.
Okay, so we're going to run for about 60 minutes, right? I mean, that's what I figured, till about 4:30 my time. Okay, yeah. Perfect. Yeah, so we're right on track. Okay, so magnetizing your list. And then the next thing that we have to talk about, and I'm going to clear this up right here, is accelerating trust. Okay, and we'll go back to the whiteboard in a second, but this is really key. Okay, and I want to kind of hear from people on this and explore this a little bit, right? Because we have to understand there's a certain psychology for those of you who haven't raised much private capital yet, and even for those of you who have, this is really, really important to think about, right? Because sometimes people will make the mistake of saying, okay, that person has money, so it's going to be really easy to get them to invest with me. And you have to understand, just because someone has money doesn't mean they're going to be careless with their money. They're not going to do their due diligence, and they're going to just invest with someone they don't know from Tom, right? So the building trust thing is absolutely critical. It's absolutely important. It's kind of the X factor here is, can you build trust? Can you deliver value? So there's 3 ways to do that, okay? And we're going to jump back to the whiteboard. So 3 ways to build trust on LinkedIn. 3 key ways for accelerating trust, okay? Yeah, let's clear this out. And these are in no particular order. We'll talk about all of these. Okay, number 1, your LinkedIn profile. Okay, so we'll spend a great deal of time here on the profile. Next piece is your content. Okay, and third piece is your messaging. Okay, so. And it's funny too, because, and I'll stop sharing here again. We'll jump back here. You know, it's funny as well because, you know, a lot of people I see in the chat are dropping links to their profiles, right? We're not going to pull anyone's profile up specifically, because if I said, who wants to volunteer to have their profile looked at, a lot of people usually when I do these things will say absolutely not. They're a little, yeah, you know, Nank might, and we're not gonna pull any up here for time's sake. But I will say a lot of people are a little shy or a little embarrassed, and you know, very few people. First of all, very few people think that their LinkedIn profile already looks great, right? And even if your profile looks good as a resume, that's not necessarily what you're looking for when it comes to attracting investors. Okay, so let's talk about, you know, what gives investors value. There's 3 big mistakes that I see entrepreneurs making who want to go out there and raise private capital. Okay, the first one is they make their LinkedIn profile sound way too much like a resume. So it sounds long-winded, it's very formal, it's very stuffy, kind of hard to read, and it's all about themselves, right? And I've got news for you. People aren't going to invest with you because of your resume, especially if they don't know you from Tom. They don't care about your resume. They don't care about your awards, your accomplishments, any of that stuff. It's, in terms of importance, it's secondary, okay? So that's one big mistake that I see a lot of people make. There, oh, I want to raise capital. Well, it's not about having an amazing resume on LinkedIn. Okay, you're looking for different things from your LinkedIn profile. Okay, instead, here's what it is about. Okay, it's about building trust, giving value, and most importantly, showing potential investors that you actually get them. Okay, I'll repeat that. It's showing potential investors that you actually get them. Okay, so if they can look at your LinkedIn profile and understand you've got a few seconds to make that first impression and to capture their attention. Okay, so if they can look at your LinkedIn profile and understand that you actually get where they're coming from, that creates a whole different level of trust and a whole different level of value. Because one of the rabbit holes someone goes into, and I'll give you an example of this as well, is, you know, a lot of you are very well versed in the types of deals that you do. Okay, a lot of you are very smart when it comes to real estate, blockchain, whatever it is that you're raising capital for, you know? And so a lot of people will say, okay, well, I'm going to show my expertise. Let me talk about some of the key things. Let's talk about the lingo and, you know, cap rates and stuff like that and percentages and all that stuff. Your LinkedIn profile is not the place to do that, okay? Because we want to understand, where is the other person, okay? Where is the person on the receiving end? They've just connected, or they've just received a connection request, or they've seen a post from someone who's probably a stranger, okay? They're checking out your profile for the very first time. They don't care about your cap rates yet. They don't care about your deals yet, okay? They want to know, can they trust you? And why should they care, okay? You need to answer that first. So what it comes down to is establishing that first and foremost, and being able to anticipate their questions in advance, okay? Being able to anticipate, where are they on the journey? A lot of you are passive investors. A lot of the folks you're looking for, they don't quite understand. For example, someone mentioned IRA investing. A lot of people don't know they can invest their IRA money and self-direct it into real estate, for example. They don't know, right? A lot of people think that the only way to build their legacy and make money from their savings, for example, is to invest it in the stock market, right? A lot of people have heard that real estate investing is a great vehicle, but they think they have to be a landlord and do tenants and toilets, right? So there's a lot of misinformation there, okay? So when you take the responsibility of giving them that aha moment and starting to educate them. And it starts with your profile, okay? That's not something that you do in the conversation with them. The appointment, you want people showing up already who are educated, who are interested, who are eager to learn more, okay? And we'll talk about that with the messaging piece as well. But you take that responsibility in your profile. All the other guys out there, they're talking about how great their deal is. You're actually sharing value. You're actually showing that you get that person, right? So that instantly builds trust. And it's not about how many years you've been in the business. It's not about how many deals you've done and pumping your chest and showing why you're so great, okay? It's not about that, okay? Because a question I get asked a lot, and I know some of you are in this situation, is, you know, we have students come through our program and they say, well, I'm still doing a W-2 job, or I've still got my other business, but I want to raise more money for my syndication, for example. What do you recommend for your profile? And the answer to that question is, what are all the ways you can leverage the current experience into raising money for real estate? So I'll give you an example. Let's say you're an engineer right now, right? So, and let's say you're doing that primarily and you're doing real estate on the side. Maybe you've got a duplex and you want to get into multifamily, for example, right? So on your LinkedIn profile, guess what? You know, you can show them and position yourself as credible and show that you have unique expertise because of the way that you look at real estate from an engineering perspective, for example, right? It's something, because you want to establish your uniqueness with your profile, right? If we can look at your LinkedIn profile and have it look cookie cutter, you're not doing it right, okay? So it's all about establishing that uniqueness piece. And for some of you, you may just be able to, you know, have your current corporate experience on your profile, but also have your real estate experience, or also have, you know, your experience with your fund or your syndication or whatever, you know, you're raising capital for, and merge the two and leverage off both, right? So don't let that stop you. You don't have to have done a lot of deals to do this, right? You don't have to even be in it full time to really use it. As a matter of fact, if you want to, you know, leave that corporate job in a few months or whenever to get into, let's say, real estate full time or whatever project you're raising capital for, this would be a great starting point for building that list of deal ready investors. Because remember, you want that list before you need it. Okay. That's going to be a really, really key thing. Okay. So that profile is the starting point. And another thing a lot of people don't know is when people Google your name, and regardless of how much you've done or you haven't done on LinkedIn, your LinkedIn profile is usually going to come up in the first results. Okay. So next to your website, which is a given, of course, next to your website, your LinkedIn profile is your most important online asset. Okay. For your visibility and for your credibility. Okay. And we're going to circle back into the other two ways of building trust here, and then we'll get into some initial questions here. So LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn content, I'll speak about that more on tomorrow's webinar as well. But here's what you want to understand, okay? With LinkedIn content, some of you may have heard from some guru out there that you have to use social media effectively, you have to post 5 times a day, right? I don't know if anyone's ever heard that. I've heard that. And I'm here to tell you it's complete BS, right? It may work for that person. They may love posting, creating a bunch of content. This isn't about posting and hoping or posting and praying, right? That's not what this is about. It's not like, because let's say, sometimes people come to me and they say, I have a problem. I posted a video to LinkedIn, or I posted an article, or someone did it for me, and I have 3,000 connections on LinkedIn, but nothing happened. No one reached out. No one even liked or commented on the damn thing, right? What am I doing wrong? Well, just because you have a certain number of contacts doesn't mean that what you're posting is going to reach all of them, okay? Quite the opposite. There's an algorithm. It's kind of complicated, but the point being is you don't need to post a bunch of content at all, right? It's more about smart posting than hard posting, right? It's more about, being intentional. And intentionality is a big word that you want to write down too, intentionality, right? It's all about having a system in place and reverse engineering the outcome that you're looking for, okay? And this is a part of that. This is the trust building matrix, right? So content, there's a lot we could talk about there. We could spend hours. We'll talk some more about it on tomorrow's webinar as well. And then direct messaging, okay? So, and messaging applies to your content, it applies to your profile, but it also applies to your direct messaging, right? So the most powerful way to go about starting that relationship building process and starting that lead generation on LinkedIn is going to be through direct messages. Now, here's what I don't want you to do, okay? And this is very, very important. There's people out there, we've all gotten those spammy messages where they're trying to sell right away. They connect with you and boom, they're trying to sell you something right out of the way. How many of you have gotten those messages? I know I have, right? Most of us have. You ever log into LinkedIn, they're a dime a dozen. So it's all about how do you set yourself apart using direct messaging. What you don't want to do is connect with someone and start pitching them your deal, okay? It's just, first of all, it's stupid. It's not strategic, it doesn't work, and you make a complete ass of yourself if you do that. But second of all, it's illegal too, okay? Even if you're doing like a 506c, it's illegal as well. You want to establish the relationship first, okay? So when we talk about direct messaging, that's not what we're talking about, okay? Instead, and I'll talk about this during tomorrow's webinar as well, instead you want a series of multi-step messaging, okay? I call it a messenger funnel. It's going to take that person from not knowing who you are, whether or not they should trust you, to saying, okay, I'm interested. Let's have a conversation. I want to learn more about what you're up to. I want to learn more about this opportunity. Okay, so that's what your messaging needs to accomplish. There's a lot we can talk about there. I'll mention tomorrow's webinar as well. We'll talk more. You'll see in tomorrow's webinar kind of the flow chart and the diagram of the messaging. Great thing about the messaging too, that I absolutely love and that our students absolutely love, you can automate the entire process, right? So once you set it up, you can use automation to do all those steps for you, which is really, really, really powerful. And the key thing is with automation, it's like good plastic surgery, okay? People shouldn't be able to tell that it's automated, right? If people see your message, they're like, oh, that's obviously can't and automated. Ugh, you're not doing it right, okay? So it's really important not to do that. And we'll talk more about that in tomorrow's webinar as well. And so the next step is, and I wanted to touch a little bit before we get into some Q&A here, I want to touch a little bit on one more word. So I'll just write this word out for you here. Systemization, okay? I know a lot of you are systems people. I know a lot of you, when you evaluate deals, when you even raise money, when you have conversations with other entrepreneurs, you like systems, right? You like processes, you like certain structure, and there's an order to things, right? So that if you take nothing else away from this, you need a system, okay? You need a system for month after month, growing your list of deal-ready investors, okay? And the system that we're talking about today is doing that through LinkedIn, having LinkedIn be the platform for that system. Now, once you get the system established, you can easily delegate it, you can automate it, and ideally, you're not looking for a one-off, right? We're not looking for a fairy tale here. We're not saying, okay, you're gonna meet, Warren Buffett on LinkedIn, and he's gonna write you a check for $1 billion and you won't need to go and raise capital again. On planet Earth, here's how it works, okay? You're gonna have a system in place where month after month, you'll be able to build your network, your sphere of influence of potential investors, okay? Some of those potential investors who have the capital to place, they're gonna wanna know more. They're gonna wanna book a call with you, okay? And then out of those people, whoever's the right fit, they're going to be part of your list of deal ready investors that when you need to fund a deal, when you need capital placed, you can go to them and they're going to be ready and willing to invest in your deals. And if they get a good value out of it, they're probably going to tell their friends too. Okay, so that's more realistic, and it starts to snowball because let's say you add just 4 or 5 new investors to your list every month, right? Over the course of 12 months, you're going to have 50 to 60 high net worth individuals who can fund your deals, okay? And it really starts to snowball beyond that, right? So I want you to think about that system in mind. I want you to think about that system as the destination here rather than, by chance finding one investor somehow on LinkedIn by throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall. Okay, that's not what we're talking about here. All right. So that's an overview of how this works. I think you're starting to see the possibilities for finding investors on LinkedIn. Before we get into some Q&A, I'm going to drop a link here in the chat box for those of you who want to see some more examples, some flow charts, and see more of the system. Check this link out. You can go and register right now, linkleads.us/RC webinar. It's a free online training. It's happening tomorrow night. You definitely want to be there in real time. In case you miss it, make sure you register anyway so you can at least get the replay. But that's happening tomorrow night. It's going to be me showing you the MADE method, giving you demonstrations, sharing a few of the things from tonight, but giving you some more examples as well. And it's going to be more of a presentation where you're going to see me share my screen and show you examples. You'll see flow charts. There's going to be a lot of great stuff. It's going to be content packed tomorrow night. It's starting at 5 p.m. Pacific, right? So that's 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain. linkleads.us/RC webinar. Make sure you go ahead and register now so you don't forget. You can do it on mobile. You can do it on your device. And that's something that I have for you as a next step for
Can you share the link in the
before we
chat?
get into the Q&A.
Can you share the link in the chat?
Yeah. Oh, well, it looks like it's here, but it looks like I might have just shared it with you. I'll share it again. linkleads.us/RC webinar. Yeah, so make sure to check that out. I'm going to grab a sip of water here, and then we can take some questions because I've been talking a lot. I want to hear what questions are coming up, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so guys, if you're feeling shy, if you prefer to put your questions on the chat or I'll speak up.
Yakov, thanks for doing this, by the way. My name is Tolu. This is super great content. I had a quick question on something you mentioned earlier about the LinkedIn content. Any chance you could just kind of give us kind of the top 3 to 5 things, or maybe top thing that common mistakes that you're seeing, or just a little bit more concrete detail? That'd be great if we could just get like an example of that.
Yeah, so on the content side, first big mistake is people are trying to post too much and they don't have a content strategy, right? So, and here's a method I came up with a while ago that's timeless, and most people need to think about content in this way. It's called the frogs method, right? So when we talk about creating content, first of all, I'm going to give you a disclaimer before I get into it. If you don't want to create a bunch of content, don't do it. You can get results. You can find investors without creating much content, right? You don't feel obligated. Don't should yourself into creating a bunch of content that you don't want to create, right? Please don't do it. It's not a fun thing. But when you're going to be strategic and post things, right? There's 5 different types of content that I would start with. Number 1 is frequently asked questions, right? So a lot of people don't realize this, but when you have frequently asked questions that you're getting asked again and again, those are great pieces of potential content for you to use. Those are great tidbits for you to potentially share, right? Because again, it shows trust and it shows this deep level of understanding, okay? Next piece is relevant updates, right? So what's happening in the market, okay? What's happening with your asset class? What are the new trends in multifamily, commercial, mobile home, syndications, your fund, blockchain, whatever you're raising capital for, what's happening, right? And it could be what you're up to in the market as well, right? What you're seeing, right? It adds this depth of expertise to it, okay? Third one, and this is a big one, objections, right? Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you think about it, what are some of the reasons why people don't invest with you, okay? And using content, you can address those objections head on and educate people past those, right? So for example, let's say, you know, one objection is, okay, I have 200 grand to invest, but you know, a lot of it is tied up in the stock market right now. And over time, the stock market has given me some returns. Why look at multifamily real estate, right? That can be a great piece of content that you put together addressing the differences, right? And it's educating people. It's not saying, oh, you're wrong, or oh, that's dumb. It's like, okay, let's look at the logic here, right? Let's position it and overcome those objections through content. Fourth piece is gold, right? So insights, tidbits of what's happening right now that most people don't know, right? Like little insider things that most people wouldn't think of, right? And the fifth thing is having a series, and that's the consistency, right? If you are going to create content, and again, you don't need to create a bunch of content, but if you are going to commit to creating content on LinkedIn, because it's the best social media to post content, be consistent, right? If you just post one thing, the odds of you getting great results from that are slim to none, right? So consistency is going to be key, and you can put things into a series, right? So, and there's I'll give you some examples of different types of content you can post on LinkedIn, but don't go down this rabbit hole if you don't want to, right? Direct messaging is my preferred approach, and it's so much more powerful for actually getting the right content in front of people. So there's, you know, you could post, you know, you could do videos, you could upload things, articles, you know, there's polls, there's a live stream, there's different types of content that are becoming relevant too, but it's just a rabbit hole that in most cases isn't worth going down. Specifically, my preferred method personally, you know, is to have different things like this, or, you know, different pieces out there that attract the right people, right? Rather than me having to think up new stuff every time, right? It's just so much more efficient, and it's so much more leveraged.
Got it. Yeah. And in other words, save the dancing videos for TikTok. I'm just kidding. Thank you.
Yeah, and there's something to being entertaining too. Like no one wants to be bored into investing with you. All right, let's see what else. If you've got a question, let us know in the chat box.
I have a question. This is Irma.
Hi, Irma.
Hey, so I have like how much personal should be in your LinkedIn versus like Facebook? And then, you know, like I know it's a professional platform, but people want to see that you're actually a real person too. So
Yeah.
what are your comments on that or suggestions?
I don't understand the questions. Are you saying
Like how much of our personal life should we put into our LinkedIn as well?
That's up to you. You know, it's all about what's going to be relevant to the investor, right? So if if you just closed an apartment deal, and you know it's the first apartment deal you've closed since leaving your job in nursing, and a lot of your potential investors work in healthcare, that's a great thing to post, right? If your child just lost a tooth, they probably don't care, right? Or initially they don't. So you know, it's having some personality and being personal enough, but also understanding the intention is to get someone to raise their hand and want to know more. So I wouldn't just share every personal milestone, but if you are sharing something personal, always tie it back into what's in it for them. Why does it matter? Why should they care?
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep. Jude has a question. She wants to speak. So.
Yeah, I do it. I'm a slow typist. It's okay. I'm 73. I got into computer programming when I was 19 years old. Really lucked into it. Anyway, so I'm a tech girl. And I met this young programmer, like, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, oh my God, you know, what was it like back then and blah, blah, blah. But so I thought, oh God, you know, what I have is, I mean, every single person could benefit from it. It's win-win. But I need a niche. I need to, you know, create my niche. And I thought, how about tech people? So, okay, you know, here's a tech person. They've got, you know, their VP of sales for a big tech company.
Sure.
Like, it's like, hey, how you doing, Mr. Tech? This is, you know, Miss Tech. Like, I mean, what do you really You know?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. So, well,
that
let me,
conversation.
yeah, so it's not like that. You don't want to waste anyone's time or feel like their time is being wasted. It's not just like, hey, what's up? How are you? You know, that's just, it's weird, or you wouldn't want people doing that to you. So there's 3 ways of giving value in messaging. Okay, we'll talk more about this on tomorrow's webinar, so make sure you've registered for that.
Okay.
So first way to give value is to share a piece of content, okay, that's educational around the opportunity that you have, okay, and positioned as something that might benefit them, okay. Second way to give value is to address a specific problem. It's called problem awareness, okay. So if you know they're having a specific challenge and you bring that up and you gauge their interest based on that, okay, now you know this is a business conversation and it feels very personal, okay. Third way to give value is to ask a question, okay? And not a how are you doing question, but a question around their level of familiarity, around their level of interest in, and I wouldn't directly say their level of interest in the opportunity because they probably don't know what they don't know, but their level of familiarity around, you know, your whatever your lane is with investing, right? So, and there's it's about having a multi-step messaging structure. We'll talk more about the psychology of it, the trust acceleration framework on tomorrow's webinar. But you're absolutely right. It's not just about, you know, coming in and saying, hey, what's up? How you doing? I heard you have a lot of money. You want to invest, right? It's not what it's about, right? So, and you also made a great point too, you know, about being, you know, you're a tech person. I surprisingly am not really a tech person. You know, I do fine. I grew up with technology, but you know, there's people who might be honest, like, oh, this sounds great, but I'm not a tech whiz. Hey, this is about 90% strategy, 10% technology, right? We have people in our program who suck at technology. They don't do anything else online except use LinkedIn to find investors, right? So if they can do it, you do it a couple times, you'll get the technology piece down, right? So it's so much more about strategy. And, you know, because you love the technology, it'll be even easier for you. So yeah, great question. That was a great point of clarity around the messaging. And, you know, it's all about establishing value for sure. Thank you.
So can you send videos?
Yeah.
My personality is way better than my writing ability.
You can send videos, you can send audios.
Okay.
Yeah, you can, there's a lot you can do there. You've got to be strategic because, you know, you seem like you've got a lot of great ideas, but where you don't want to be is you don't want to be stuck in possibility. Like, oh, I could be doing 15 different things. And therefore, what do people do? Sometimes they do none, right? So you got to pick a lane, got to get clear on that. That's something, again, we'll talk a little more about on tomorrow's webinar. And then if you want to go further, we can talk about how to do that as well. But yeah, getting strategic is going to be key.
Okay, and one last question. It's about your book, Disrupting LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Is that a good book for us kind of LinkedIn prospectors looking for, you know, the box?
You know, it's a general, yeah, so it's a general book. I mean, I wrote it several years ago. A lot of the concepts are still good. But when it comes to, it's different. Like if you were wanting to use LinkedIn to sell, you know, software, for example, right? It's a different strategy than actually finding investors, right? And raising private capital. So that book specifically doesn't cover how to do that. So I would check out the webinar, and we've got some additional resources from that. Because you want to, it's a different process because you're asking someone ultimately to invest their money with you as opposed to buying, you know, a product for their business, right? So it's a different, that's what makes the system so unique. Yep.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great presentation, by the way.
And we've got a few, Steve and I'm seeing a lot of stuff in the chat. I want to make sure, let's see. I think Judy is up next. Before we get to, we've got Judy, we've got Chris, we've got Nank or Nan, can forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. I'm going to drop the link to the webinar once again for those of you who haven't checked it out yet. Make sure you do. And then we'll answer those 3 questions and I think we'll be able to wrap up. So Judy, up next, we've got Judy Cooper. So Judy, you can either type your question in or you can you can talk to us.
She's on mute.
Yeah, Judy, if you can unmute yourself. Yeah, that should be good.
The money that I've been able to raise rather successfully is because I've known some of these people, and through very, very conversations about what I'm up to and what I've been doing. So I'm a little bit stuck in figuring out what, because I was able to hyper target, if you like it, to these individuals. So when you're starting off with LinkedIn and redoing a profile, it just seems I'm kind of lost. Like, what are some suggestions that would be, that would help me identify things that investors would be interested in? Like,
What's your, so let me ask you a couple questions and then I'll answer that specifically.
only two? Okay.
Oh yeah, I mean, we could go down 20, but what's your very succinctly, what was your background before raising money? What did you do in your corporate career?
Oh, I'm still doing real estate. That's how I.
You were
that's
like
how
a
I
real
started,
estate
yes.
broker.
And then I started talking to people about
Gotcha.
teaching people about 401ks. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so when it comes to positioning yourself, right? I mean, that's obviously, you've developed expertise around the market. You've done real estate transactions as an agent. So when it comes to hyper targeting people, and I don't know what your network on LinkedIn is like already, right? We teach something in our program called reactivation. And so for example, if you have, I'm just gonna, hypothetically, let's say you have 2,000 contacts on LinkedIn right now, you may or you may not. But if you, or maybe 500, and point being, as a real estate agent, you probably know a lot of people already. That's just the nature of the beast, right? And there's probably a lot of people who know you, who you haven't talked to in a while, right? So I would figure out how to, identify those people and connect with them on LinkedIn and put together messaging to, show, to kind of let them know what you're up to, right? Engage their interests. For example, mortgage lenders are constantly, wanting to get in front of agents. A lot of those guys love investing in the right real estate deal, right? So that might be a great group for you to look at. There's a lot to the profile. I'll talk about the different pieces on tomorrow's webinar as well. But I would say, it's your biggest thing. Take it one step at a time, okay? Rather than try to figure everything out, here quickly and in a matter of minutes. It takes a little bit of thinking. It also takes the right kind of framework and the right psychology, right? So, it's about how do we use messaging to give value and to establish that relationship as if we already knew the person. And in your case, I can almost guarantee you there's a lot of people who already know you, who you could reconnect with on LinkedIn, who would be interested in investing with you and have the means to do that. So I would think of that as a starting point.
Starting point. Okay, awesome. Okay, good. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right, Chris. Is there a LinkedIn profile you suggest take a look at, get a good idea of doing this well? Yeah, we've got a lot. We'll talk more about it on tomorrow's webinar as well. We don't have time to get into like the play-by-play of the profile. Here's the issue though with that kind of thinking, Chris. Everyone's profile needs to be a little bit different, right? So if I show you a profile, I say it's good, and you're like, great, they're also doing multifamily, copy paste, 2 thumbs up. It's just, it'd be nice if it worked like that, but it's not going to work for you, right? Because it's not original, and it won't be aligned to you attracting this investors who are going to work with you, right? So it's not like, oh, just follow this exact script, and all of a sudden, the profile will magnetically attract investors. It's more of thinking about it in a range of things you can do. And I'll talk about the key sections on tomorrow's webinar. And I'll also talk about 2 other kind of paths to avoid on the profile that I see a lot of real estate entrepreneurs getting into as well. And then last question, and then I'll turn it over to Stephen. And forgive me if I mispronounce it. I got your last name down. I know it's Win, but is it Nank or is it Nank? Let us know if you're still with us.
Oh, it's Nance, short for Nancy.
Nance. Oh,
No,
duh.
you're fine. You're fine.
But I got the last name right though, right?
Hey, you know what? At least people will actually remember my name now, because it takes them numerous times to try to remember it, right?
Exactly. That's awesome.
So the question that I have for you today is that, I know it's very easy to, just direct message multiple different individuals or, potential investors throughout a day. However, what would you say would be, something that you've actually done personally yourself and has worked in the past as a really great icebreaker to really, alleviate a lot of that salesy type, notion that you'd come across when you do actually, approach these type of high net worth investors?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And the first thing to kind of keep in mind there is absolutely, you don't want to go out of the gate swinging and talking about deals, and you don't want to just say, hi, how are you? Right. Because that's just weird. Like we talked about with Jude. So my personal go-to has always been, and I recommend this for a lot of our clients as well, is to share a piece of content. Okay. Now the content needs to be strategic. Okay. But the piece of content starts to educate them on either a challenge that they have that investing with you may alleviate, or something surprising that they probably didn't know about either passive investing or your specific type of investing. And that piece of content, it can be a video, it can be a PDF, it can be a webinar, you name it, but it's a piece of content, and I call it a flagship content, right? Meaning you create it once and then you can repurpose it over and over. Okay. And what that does, and for those of you, you'll see it on tomorrow's webinar too, just because I practice what I preach. It educates people and it inspires action, and it gives people a whole different perspective, right? Because a lot of people, you have to ask yourself this: if they're a high net worth individual, why aren't they already investing in your asset class, right? Or if they are, why aren't they investing with you yet? Well, they don't know you, right? But it's usually not just because they don't know you. That trust is big, but it's also, educating them on what the opportunity is, and why it makes sense for them, right? So whatever you're sharing, it needs to be perceived as relevant, right? And the more specific you can be, the better. So Nancy, for example, like if we're talking about tech founders, right? Your piece of content would be geared, let's say you made a PDF for tech founders, right? Your piece of in the title of that PDF, you would have the word tech founders, right? Even though the content might apply to architects too, right? But when it says tech founders, it becomes hyper specific, and now it's for them, because you want people to think and say, this is for me. And if you do that, you're going to be well on your way.
Okay, thank you.
So Yakov, I have a question before we wrap up. So you spoke about the LinkedIn, the profile, the content, and the direct messaging on LinkedIn. So are LinkedIn groups any good? they can be. They're better for list building. They're better for finding people, but actually, well, I mean, if you're going to commit to creating one and putting it's a lot of work. I've got a couple on LinkedIn. There's a few benefits, but in most cases, unless you really in your specific situation have a super niche group, they're a lot less active than Facebook groups, right? Because people on LinkedIn, the way they generally have conversations is engaging with content or engaging in direct messages. They're typically not spending a bunch of time scrolling through LinkedIn groups like they are, for example, on Facebook. Yep, makes sense. Okay, if you guys have I'm not sure if Yakov, you have a couple more minutes, maybe last question if you want to ask. Anyone? Okay, so so that was great. So thanks Yakov. That was great value to everyone today, including myself. Really appreciate you joining us. Thanks for everyone who joined also.
Yeah, you're welcome. And last thing I'll say, for those of you, want everyone to do two things as we wrap up here, okay? And appreciate everyone for being here live. First thing, make sure that you go send me a connection request on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find, Yakov Smart. Okay, super easy to find. Go ahead and do that. We'll at least connect there. Secondly, all of you need to go to linkedleads.us. I'll drop this right here, right now, for those of you who haven't done so yet, and register for tomorrow's training. Like, if you liked what you heard today, tomorrow is a different flavor of that. You're going to see me screen share. You're going to see some flow charts. You're going to hear a couple of the same things, but it's going to go deeper in some of these areas that we talked about today. And at the very least, you'll get a better iteration. You'll go even deeper into how you can apply this for finding investors. So make sure you check that out, linkleads.us/RC webinar. It's in the chat box. If you can at all, make sure that you attend in real time. If you know that you can't make it in real time, still try to be there in real time. But if you know you can't make it in real time, at least register so you can have access to the replay. Okay. And I'll see everyone there. I'll look forward to connecting. Thank you so much for having me, Stephen, and have a great night, everyone.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.